Unspoiled Network podcast.
This is Spoil Me, covering Dandelion Dynasty Book 4, Speaking Bones, Chapters 25 and 26, Aculeum, and the Battle of Crescent Island, Part 3. In these chapters, we get to see the discovery of a glow-in-the-dark paint that winds up being incredibly important. This whole thing is crazy. Welcome to Spoil Me. Welcome to the show, everyone. I am Natasha. Thank you very much to Kyle for commissioning these episodes, and once again for flexibility and allowing me to move up the episode a little bit earlier in the day. It's not like the paint actually isn't really the part that's interesting. It's the photosensitivity that we discover in Aculeum that is so wild. I am still not entirely sure that I get how this works. And I feel like I have said that a lot in this book in particular. I am just going to go ahead and own that, I don't want to pretend that I really understand a thing when I don't. And if there is somebody out there listening who feels like they can explain it to me in a way that, for a complete lay person makes more sense, I welcome that. I do want to say, I feel like this has been explained pretty well in this book, and if I still don't get it, that's maybe just on me, sometimes you just gotta accept that your brain doesn't work a certain way. That's gonna happen. But anyway, okay, so we're gonna do chapter 25. This is a year earlier, and we are at Tirokozo, and Ruthi is doing her, her experimentation and whatnot. And this first bit is really sweet because Ruthi has asked for Firo to be brought to her because she has something exciting to show. And it turns out that she has found the sword, Nara Oena, the Doubt Ender, the one wielded by Matazindu, which it turns out they were able to discover with having sunk to the bottom of the river. You guys, this almost goes sideways in this moment, and then it kind of does actually go sideways in another later moment. But I just wanted to address the fact that Ruthi, despite everything, really kind of, she should know better is what I'm going to say here. But she keeps on having these moments with Firo where she is trying to keep a thing under wraps so that she can surprise him with a dramatic reveal. And he keeps being annoyed because he misunderstands where she's going with something at first, and doesn't really let her get a word in until she is in a corner and has to be no, that's not what this is. And I just really want her, and look, Ruthi, I get it. I am also a huge drama queen. I am not mad at you for that. But maybe once you've realized that he isn't the most patient person and has a lot of questions and things, maybe just let go of having to do the big dramatic thing. Maybe it's not really going to work out because that's not the type of person. It doesn't work, And there's nothing wrong with that. I understand you wanting to do it your way, but sometimes you have just got to accept that certain people are the type that are going to foil your plans. You know, this is something that that Owen and I he said that anytime that he has tried to surprise me, I am somebody who like picks up on tells or plans myself, like so many things in advance, that I can kind of ruin surprises because I want to know all the details of everything. And this is me being a control freak, so that keeping anything sort of secret until the last second is very difficult unless he has formulated an entire like fake scenario to feed me. Because otherwise, I just start to poke holes and be like, well, why are we doing it that way? If they're not even going to be there, then why are we and so unfortunately, I've ruined it for myself. And I'm somebody, I don't dislike surprises, but it's not really something that can be done anymore because I just ruin it. So all this to say, everybody isn't always going to handle a thing the same way as everybody else, and that's fine. But I do find it funny that this happens like more than one time because he almost blows it for her with trying to give him this sword. And then when he finds out what it actually is, he's like genuinely really moved by it. You can see how much it means to him. And I loved this moment. Like, just how moved he is, in addition to the way that he decides he is going to handle the remains of the other people that were discovered, because obviously Ruthi comes from like a grave robbing background, and that is how these like tools and weapons were discovered, as well as these remains. And they are not actually sure which of the remains that they find are, you know, people that were on his father's side or people who were on Montezindu's side. And essentially what he says is, it doesn't matter. If they can be identified, let them go to their families. But and he says, make honor tablets to recognize their service in battle, and I'll personally deliver each to the family with a stipend. Pay for it by auctioning off more of my jewels and books. And Mota has to tell him all his shit is gone. And it turns out Firo had been hanging on to a couple of things that reminded him of his parents. And Mota has to be like, I don't know how to tell you this, man, but none of that shit's left. It's gone. And Firo then, he says, all right, well, sell the stuff that reminds me of my parents then. And I've got to say, I want to own something here. I really didn't expect very much from Firo. You guys know. I was feeling pretty frustrated at his lack of ability to see the big picture, to pick up on the like nuances and political ramifications in different conversations. There have been a lot of moments where he has been shown to be kind of hot-headed, and even in this battle he proves himself to be, because he does something that's not a great plan. And things wind up working out in the end, but they maybe didn't have to suffer the kinds of losses they did, and he just decided to barge in anyway. So, all that said, I really underestimated this guy. And even in the scenes where, you know, he has met, and I'm forgetting her name, but the girl that is like exiled basically from her homeland, and he's talking about how he has been misunderstood so much of his life, and you know, there was a part of me, I'm not gonna lie, that was rolling my eyes just a little bit. Like, dude, maybe sometimes people don't understand you because you don't have the capacity to keep up always. And we have seen that. And I forget how much time has passed since that team in the council chamber, and how many other things have occurred, and the growth that he has experienced. And I really kind of wasn't expecting much of him. This whole sequence of chapters, not only are we learning just how much he understands about the tactics of battle and everything like this, he is proving to be a genuinely compassionate and honorable person in a way that is so rare. I'm trying to think of a way to say this, because it's not even just about caring for other people. It's beyond that, because compassion, this is going to sound fucked up. Give me a chance. Compassion is kind of cheap. You can feel for people and pat yourself on the back for the fact that you feel for them and that you are able to acknowledge that they have shit they're going through. That doesn't actually mean anything if you don't back it up with action. And Firo does. He is out here making genuine sacrifices of himself for his people. And this is what Mota says to himself, because Firo is offering to sell prized possessions off so that he can give the money to soldiers from a battle from forever ago, who probably at this point in their lives have long let go of the dream of ever being repaid isn't even the word, but acknowledged even for what they went through and sacrificed. And it's not the soldiers themselves, I guess. It's the family remaining, because the soldiers, these are the dead that they're finding. But it would be so easy to be well, we're going to honor their sacrifice and make sure it wasn't in vain, and have it be all a really symbolic moment that is not actually, you're able to use this as a sort of rallying point, but in such a way that it's not materially beneficial to anybody, and that you don't have to personally make any sort of sacrifice. And instead, he is deciding to not only do this, he wants to build a museum eventually, and share some of the weapons and things that they have recovered, so that people can touch history, I think is the way that he puts it. There is just a lot of walking the walk as well as talking the talk. And I really want to acknowledge that, the rarity of that, and how I think of myself as a pretty compassionate person. And he's going beyond what I have to admit would even occur to me to do. And, maybe if I were in his position dealing with some of the stuff he does every day, it would occur to me, because I'd have a different perspective on a lot of this. But as of right now, when he finds these bones and is oh, I'm going to send these people a stipend, and they died what, at this point, 20 years ago, 15 years ago? I mean, that is, he doesn't have it to spare. He could so easily make an excuse about how they are extremely tight on their budget already, and they have these weapons that they have to produce, and they have these battles that are coming up that they have to fight. And as much as he wishes so much that he could spare it, they will understand, and they would want him to use that money towards the battle. I feel like, were I him, that's probably the approach I would have, would be, I'm going to frame it so that I use finding these people as a sort of like reminder and an inspiration. And I would not be sending money because I would feel so acutely how on the edge we were with our own budget, and say that these people sacrificed against the Liuku. We're fighting the Liuku, and so we should use any resources toward that on behalf of their memory. And, you know, I'm acknowledging as well, there isn't anything wrong with the approach that I'm describing. Like, not inherently. It's not, that's kind of my point, is that would be politically a really acceptable way to do this. And it would be, in some people's eyes, a more responsible approach even than what he decides to do. But his mind doesn't really work in a traditionally political way. And that has its drawbacks, but the drawbacks that come with that are the kind of thing that I think will come back and bite you in the ass when you are in the position of actually being at the palace, dealing with like courtiers and advisors every day. In the position that Firo is currently in, where he is attempting to rally the people, find like funds and support where there isn't any, and just generally sort of create something out of nothing. This sort of personal sacrifice and setting an example is a lot more effective, because people want to feel like they know you, and they want to feel like you understand on a much more practical level what everybody else is sacrificing for the cause that you believe in. Because this is something that we run into all the time. Oftentimes, the folks who are higher ups don't see the realities of what people on the ground go through. And he could easily hold himself apart from everything and not sacrifice very much at all, because nobody would really expect him to be honest. You know, that's not how most people see his role. And the fact that he is doing everything the way he is this personality is perfect for the kind of wartime situation that they have going on. But the thing that I am concerned about is what happens in peacetime. Because if Firo manages to beat the Liuku and he winds up actually being the emperor, and he is supposed to be the emperor right now, but you know, we've got Dara out there. God knows if she's ever coming back. I don't know if she intends to at all at this point. Like, I know she hasn't come back with the most recent opening of the Wall of Storms, but I don't know if she planned on doing it with the next opening, perhaps, you know? So it's possible that I don't have to worry about what Firo is going to be like as a ruler in peacetime, because maybe he won't be in that position. But if he is in that position, the thing that concerns me is the type of compassion and like immediate personal sacrifice that he is willing to make now isn't going to be as useful, because he is going to be removed from the people on an everyday level. What I mean is, you know, he's down in and amongst the Blossom Gang as they're coming up with all of these inventions, and is really like, you know, just rubbing shoulders with regular people every day. If he becomes emperor during peacetime, it's the way to combat that, I think, would be to find a way to be around people on a daily level the way he is here, and manage to somehow maintain this connection so that you don't lose touch. But I don't know if he would realize the importance of it until it's too late. I hope he would. I hope that it's like just such an instinct that he talked to regular people, that he wouldn't even, it would just be part of who he is and how he rules to stay rubbing shoulders with the regular folks. You know, it's possible that this is not even something that I need to worry about because of his personality being so consistent no matter the situation, that he would find a way. But what I am thinking is maybe he needs to do the thing Cooney was so good at and find people to surround himself with that are excellent at the political parts, so that his personality of compassion doesn't wind up tripping him up and screwing him in the end. Because I really love this vibe as like in general, because I'm a bleeding heart, you know, I just fucking am. I want a ruler who is aware of what people need and very conscious of what he's asking of everyone. This is ideal. But I also definitely understand that you can't approach everything with this kind of mindset, or you completely drain the system out. You've got to like learn how to balance this intense compassion and desire to help and give with some judgment. And I just wonder if he will be able to keep that in mind when it's beyond the time of, you know, the immediate threat of war and everything. So anyway, I know I went off on a tangent there, but because I feel like I misjudged Firo so much, I really wanted to talk about how impressed I am. And I really appreciate Ken Liu's ability to write a ruler who is just as like becoming just as lovable for me as Cooney Garut in his way, but it's just so completely different. You know, Cooney like grew up from nothing. He was a fucking con artist. The whole way that he managed to do anything is frankly insane. And Firo was born into it. So their situations are extremely different. But one could even say that the fact that he was born into it and still has this kind of compassion is saying a lot for his personality, because there are so many folks who just wouldn't really care because they had enough. And the way they were raised, I think, certainly has something to do with it, but there's also something that's just inherent, I think, in people like this. Anyway, okay, sorry. So this, the whole like situation here, we find out about the way that the budget works. And this is a whole conversation that we wind up having later between Ratiera and, there's a girl that she started like working with a lot. I'm trying to find her, Kisley. That's right. They talk a while about the bureaucracy that Gia has created. And I really appreciated the way that this whole conversation goes, because understandably, bureaucracy is something that a lot of people revile. And again, I get why. Like, it is infuriating sometimes. So I am not going to stand here and try and pretend that I haven't run into that myself, where you need like 11 forms before you can get the other form, like obviously. But it also does really serve an important function. And what we get in the conversation between Kisley and Ratiera is that Rati has been underestimating what it is that Kisley and her department do. Basically, Kisley responds with like, yeah, no shit. Like, everybody thinks that we don't do anything. And there's a real sense of frustration in Kisley. She is tired of everybody sort of acting as if they are just theoretical scholars that are just like looking for knowledge for the sake of it, and like it's all purely academic, when what they are intending is real practical solutions and inventions to things. And she's just like, so many folks aren't aware of what our real goals are, so we often are not taken very seriously. And I really appreciated this, because that's the part of bureaucracy that I think gets lost when it's talked about a lot of the time, is the fact that bureaucracy is set up to address so many different problems. And I don't know, there's just, I expected this whole conversation, the way it starts off about bureaucracy, I thought what we were going to get was kind of a, oh, if only they weren't standing in our way, we would be able to do the thing. But because bureaucracy is so bad and always blocks progress or whatever, we are being stymied from reaching our full potential. And that's not it at all. So we get the first sort of tastes of that here, and talking about like the way the budget works and everything. And that whole other conversation comes up later, but I'll just talk about it now. It's fine. And Keesley is showing Ruthi this like sort of, it's almost like a perpetual motion machine. And Ruthi is really impressed with it, but Keesley later on writes her a letter, and she had been very excited to like show it to, I'm not even sure. I think she says, let's see. I'm trying to find the spot where she mentions the name of who it is, because she says it hoping that Ruthi is going to look impressed, and she doesn't really have almost any reaction. And Keesley's like, oh, she doesn't care, because Ruthi is not about that life. She's about the invention life. She does not care about like the politics and shit. But what it turns out is like something like this has been invented a long time earlier. And she is feeling, she says something like her pride took a hit. I felt so bad for her, because I was really excited and thinking like, wow, she really did something here. And the fact that she writes this in a letter and it's sort of buried in there, I thought this invention was going to wind up being the thing that was like the game changer in this particular battle. But it turns out that it's a whole other thing. So let's see. Here's the thing. There's a moment they're creating these, what Rati's trying to make is like a mechanical Grinifin sort of thing. And I'm going to read this part. An elongated object like a flash of lightning erupted out of the clouds to his right, and arcing up gently, swept right past him and his Grinifin barely yards away. Ginky panicked and bolted to the left, her wings flapping so hard that Firo felt his organs had been left behind. I really liked that. Fighting against the disorienting sensation, Firo finally brought the young Grinifin back under control. Panting, heart thumping from the ordeal, his mind lingered over the astonishing sight he had just witnessed. It was like watching a graceful Dyran, I think that's how you say that, leap out of the ocean to skim above the waves. Except this particular flying fish had a body of bamboo over 20 yards in length and a sparkling head that reflected sunlight with dazzling brilliance. Along its length were numerous translucent fin wings that fluttered and flapped in a coordinated manner, and behind it was a whirring tail that spun too fast to be seen clearly. As the missile shot through the clouds, the twirling tail stirred and spun the wisps into a mist that refracted the sunlight into a rainbow, much like the real Dyran's rainbow-hued tail. It wriggled through the air as though it were born for this element, swimming flying as adroitly as a dolphin at sea. Which sounds really cool. But we get back to the practical. where Ruthi is so excited about this, and Fiyero is like, first of all, it almost hit me, so what the fuck? And secondly, what do we even do with this? And Ruthi is really caught up in the excitement of creating it, but she doesn't exactly think about the realities of it. So Fiyero asks, how long can it fly? She says, half an hour. I'm sure we can increase the range with more refinement. Yeah. I know you wanted to preserve the Silkmotic bolts as memorials, but as your parents would be honored to see you giving up mementos of them to aid the families of martyred veterans, I think it would honor the Marshal and those who fought with her to see us adapt the old into the new, turning their dead bolts into living mechanical dirons to bring freedom to the people of unredeemed Dara. And he just sort of thinks it over and then just says, we can't use it in the way you envision. A range of many miles is of little import if a missile cannot be aimed. A mechanical diron is, after all, not a true living being. It's blind and without intelligence. It's like a man trapped inside a camera obscura. He can contemplate and regulate his own breathing, but he has no awareness of the world outside. How can we possibly hope to strike a target from miles away by plotting in an unalterable course at the start? By the time the missile arrived at its destination, the Gorynophin would have long seen its approach and moved out of the way. Ornithopters can be useful because we'll be deploying them in large swarms at a short range, but we can't possibly make enough mechanical dirons for that tactic to work. And again, she's just like, phew, okay. I love this. One consequence of working for a boss who was free from vanity was unvarnished criticism. I like that line. So she is holding on to this idea, but it's not something that she can use as is right away. So let's see. This is when she gets the letter from Keesley, and Keesley describes this really wild experiment. You mentioned in passing the need for large quantities of oil of vitriol, from which I deduce you might be interested in a novel method for its manufacture. As it happens, a friend, an alchemist at the Imperial Academy in Pon, has been assigned to study more efficient ways to produce various compounds needed for industry. While he was visiting Ginpen this week, I asked him about oil of vitriol. He told me the most promising method involves the roasting of sulfur-reeking ores from Mount Kana and Mount Rampa in a steam furnace, along with acid-decomposed saltpeter. To contain the highly corrosive oil that results from this procedure, the large vats lined with sheets of lead must be used. Early prototypes resulted in several explosions, but nobody was seriously injured. And then, let's see, where's the part that, oh, right. So this is the beginning of the oil of vitriol thing. And then later on, she gets another letter which describes the weird thing that she found. They've been trying to find something that channels electricity better than silver. And do you recall the novel method of producing oil of vitriol? My friends wrote back, after cooking each batch, the furnace and lead-lined tanks are coated with a noxious sludge, in which are found various substances, some known, some unknown. Someone sent me samples, and I began experimenting right away. So there are these little, like, gray balls, is the way that they're sort of described. Beads. They did not appear to be metallic, and my initial chronometer tests conducted after a long day of other investigations revealed little to no silkmotic channeling capacity. So she thinks, okay, forget it. And then the next day she has this whole thing happen, takes up the entire day, and she winds up going back into the lab during the day instead of the evening when she usually does. And when she tests their channeling capacity, then they are really high. And she's like, wait, what the fuck? Third test, once again, nothing. And she's trying to figure out what the factor could be. And eventually she realizes it's the light in the room. And it should be mentioned, the reason she realizes this is because a voice whispers to her, look at the chronometer or chronometer. I don't know which way to say it. And I have to assume that this is basically a god that stepped in and was just like, bitch, look. And I realized when I first tested the substance, it had also been in the evening, and the second time had been the middle of the day. I moved my hand, immersing in shadow, and the needle swung to 0. And bathed in light, it began to jump. Can you believe it? I found a substance that channels the Silkmotic force only when it is doused in light. I've discovered Oculium, a substance that can see. And I don't know if this is based on something real. I have to assume it is. I am, as we all know, quite ignorant. So, forgive me. I'm just sitting here in the dark. But I really thought that this was a cool idea. So then we have Ruthi showing up. Ruthi interrupts this bath that she's about to take, and Keesley is like obsessed with baths, and it's something that Ruthi kind of makes fun of her for at one point. But y'all, I would just like to mention that personally, the bath that was described sounded so amazing that I was also deeply upset that it was interrupted. I'm just going to read this just to give you she hauled water from the well, heated it over the stove, and filled her bath barrel. It had been a long, tiring journey. They were flying against a headwind almost the whole way, and at one point she had taken up an oar herself, because the pilot explained the Emperor's orders had been to make all haste. She sprinkled some bath salts given to her by an alchemist friend from Munich, supposed to do wonders for the skin, and inhaled the fragrant steam appreciatively. Just as she was sinking into the bath barrel to give her sore muscles a much-needed treat, Ruthi barged in. Honestly, he really made that shit sound good. And I was devastated on her behalf. I am a sucker for baths as well. I have always loved baths and fires. Fireplace, fire pit, either one. And the sensation of sinking into a hot bath is like nothing else. There's nothing that comes close. It's just, there isn't. And the fact that she gets interrupted here broke my heart. And Ruthi tries to act like she's being so difficult because she doesn't want to just get out of the bath. I will say later on, she convinces Ruthi to come and have a bath with her, and that did mollify me a little bit. But it was a close thing. I wasn't happy about it. I'm just going to admit. So this is the beginning of their experimentation with all of this. And Ruthi had an idea in her head of how this was going to work. But it's not what she expected. Can it distinguish shapes, colors, sizes? Can it be taught to respond to silhouettes of a certain design? It's not really an eye at all. It's no more sensitive than an orchid that knows to open its petals at dusk and close them at dawn. And she's sort of trying to think of a way to make an eye, because she is thinking about, what if we could target it, right? That's the point of the other things that she was creating, is a way to make it so that they can be aimed at a moving target. And so what she gets sort of fixated on is creating an object that can see. And she's thinking, I'll talk to blind people and find out how they manage to get by. I will look at the ways that animals' eyes work. And eventually Keesley interrupts and is like, I really think that you're coming at this from the wrong direction. You are not, you're trying to think about the straightforward, I need something that can see. But the way that you've got to do this is come at it sideways. And Ruthi sits back and thinks, okay, is it really like sight that I need? Maybe that's not it. And she's looking out the window from the bath, and she notices sunflowers. The sunflowers had followed the course of the sun from east to west every day, silently turning back to the east during the night to await the next dawn. Keesley was saying something, but Ruthi no longer heard her. Her thoughts filled with visions of swarming moths tapping against the screen, an excited cat chasing after a bright spot of light, and the orderly, almost imperceptibly slow turning of thousands of golden faces in unison in a sunflower field. So she is realizing, like, just attracted to light might be all I need. So she has the test with Firo. And I love this because she told him to come prepared for a dark night and have his eyes pre-adjusted by spending some time in the dark. And he does not listen to her. So he is knocking into fucking everything. And eventually we have a moment where he thinks she is using a baby Garinafin in the experiment, and she has to talk him down because he is freaking out. And he's like, why didn't you just tell me from the beginning? And she's like, I wanted some drama. God. The Garinafin is just a target. So it's flapping. And she says the exact course is known only to the apprentice who drilled the instruction cork. So the Garinafin's moving at random, basically. And then the droning from the invisible hunter whirled overhead as it circled around in the darkness. Suddenly, the pitch of the droning changed as the hunter seemed to have caught the scent of its prey. The noise grew fainter but more high-pitched as it sped away. The Garinafin disappeared in a blinding flash. A moment later, the observers heard the dull, deep rumble of the explosion. And Firo's like, okay, you gotta explain what the hell what is this? And she explains that, first of all, that she's calling them sunflowers. Like the unintelligent missiles, the sunflower used the exact same silkmotic bolt shell, diamond-tipped head, varnished silk fins, and spinning propellers. But instead of relying on a pre-drilled instruction cork for guidance, the sunflower was piloted by a system Ruthi designated the phototropic archon. It is the key to operation. These gray beads are made of aculeum, a mineral that channels silkmotic force in proportion to the amount of light it's exposed to. The ring eye was placed immediately behind the diamond tip of the missile. The diadem frame contained the multiple flaring teeth, each one curled over a single bead, such that each aculeum bead could only be fully illuminated by light coming from a specific direction. Each bead was connected to a circuit powered by a mill that controlled a fin on the side of the missile as the bead. Okay, I'm not going to get into this because we have a lot more to cover and I am really running out of time. I think I'm getting it on this, like, reread slowly. I think. Suppose there's a source of light ahead. The amount of light falling on the left sensor will be greater than the light on the right, meaning that the silkmotic mill connected to the left will spin with more force than the one on the right, and it will curve the flight path. As the missile continues to turn to the left, it will eventually overshoot, placing the source of light on the right. The amount of light falling on the right will be greater than the left, and the mill connected to the right will now spin with more force. Therefore, the fin on the left relaxes and returns to previous shape. It plots a course toward the source of light, taking into account the missile's own motion. And he's like, oh, shit. Okay, I get it. So, y'all, this fucking thing is so destructive. And it's like, this is what I said last time. I understand that this is what war is. I get it. But I hate reading about these poor fucking Garinnefin getting flattened and blown up and everything. I hate this for them. I completely understand the necessity, and I respect the creation of this weapon. It's brilliant, like truly. But I found it so upsetting the way that it works and how it completely like just the nature of the way that it takes out the Garinnefin feels so brutal, and it bummed me out. And I was like happy for our friends because they won the battle, but I am not going to pretend that I was like fist pumping and cheering during this section because I was just so sad. I really genuinely felt so sad. And these Garinnefin, I mean, like, I don't know how many they have left now at this point. I feel like maybe none. We have like a few, you know, but almost none. It just, for me, overshadowed, and this is why I'm not good for fucking war. You know, this is really what it comes down to, is just, oh boy, it's not for me. I wanted to cheer for our friends, and all I could think was, oh, these poor animals. You know, that was all I could fucking think. So what we have, like, we're in Ghoston's perspective, and there is this weird sort of mist that all of the Garinnefins and riders fly through. And they think to themselves that maybe it's acid, but it doesn't seem to be harmful. And all of this is like, you know, very tense because I'm not entirely sure how this works yet. So I'm not sure either. And then they all look at each other and they realize that they are glowing. And at first, everybody is just like, why? What is this? And of course, just being able to see the Garinnefin is certainly helpful in battle. But there's something about it that makes Ghoston freak out as she's starting to, like, she doesn't know what they're going to do, but she can tell the direction we're going. And she hears this whistling. And it's heading straight for the Garinnefin, and she's screaming for them to scatter because they're all kind of clustered together. And this thing hits the Garinnefin and it explodes. Riders incinerated in an instant. Nearby Garinnefin scattered like fragments of this new midnight sun as the deafening noise reached the Stunleyuku observing from the city ships. So they're basically like heat-seeking missiles, but they're light-seeking instead. And she, like, poor Ghoston is realizing all of the edge of the water, like the area where her enemy is located. There are no torches. There are no nothing. They are using the light. And that is what is bringing some of these things to their ships as well and fucking the ships up. So she starts yelling at everybody to douse the torches. They're attracted to the light. Get the Garinnefins to like dive underwater so that the glow paint will come off. And that's like a big ask because Garinnefins don't like swimming. And at least one Garinnefin with too little lift gas drowned with all its riders, which just kills me, you guys. Honest, this was so hard to read. One more was struck by an invisible missile before it could be fully cleansed. The rest managed to wash off the paint and heave themselves back into the air, their riders clinging to the netting, coughing, hacking, half drowned. The invisible hunters continued to roam the air, emitting that shrill, intolerable screech. Order the Garinnefins to search the shoreline for the launch point of these weapons. We have to destroy the source, but don't breathe fire. Claw and maw only. So they guide their mounts to the shore. Multiple loud whistles roamed the air, screaming from every direction. The riders felt themselves sliding toward total panic as they strained against the darkness. And the Garinnefin are starting to freak out. and, you know, they're like moving their heads in every direction, and they couldn't take it. After a moment, they all just lose their training, and they breathe fire, and all of them get taken out. It's so rough. And we go to Rafira Tan, who is the one that sort of managed to like calm his rider, or calm his Gerinifin in the midst of the other attack. And I was thinking maybe he was going to manage it this time, but no, the Gerinifin breaks his back and then winds up getting killed. And it sucks. I hate this so much. And I hate this. The glow brightened, and the Gerinifin reappeared in the sky, lit up from within, the veined skin glowing like varnished silk, the quivering muscular sheath like a jellyfish pulsating in the dark sea. Goztan knew that she was looking at the Gerinifin's agonized death throes. The mysterious missile, guided by the light of the fire breath, had plunged straight down the gullet and exploded deep inside. I hated this, you guys. This was awful. And Noda Me is freaking out, you know. Goztan gets her mount, and she goes to speak to Firo. And what we have here, she wants to fight in single combat. Now, I know from being inside Goztan's head that she is an honorable person. But I also know that she is aware what's on the line here and has low-key come to the conclusion that she's going to do what the fuck it takes to get the job done. So I wasn't entirely sure if he should trust her myself. And she's baiting him a little bit in this conversation, talking about how he didn't really beat them. You got all of our Gerinifin exhausted, and even then you couldn't take us down. And just sort of like, basically her argument is, you used the genius and the invention of other people to win this, and that doesn't count. That is not being like a superior in battle. That's using tricks and shit. And that's not what makes a warrior. So what I want is for us to do a one-on-one fight. And if you are able to beat me, the Liuku will surrender. If you can't beat me, then fuck you, basically. Like, we are going to you are going to allow us to leave. And he is like, you can't, he thinks you can't be serious. I've clearly won, and why would I like throw all of this away? To which she replies basically like, you haven't really won. You've done shady shit like your father used to do. And that really gets at a sore point for him, because he knows that his father did pull some shady shit. And I was super sad about the fact that he is apparently still kind of like has a lot of shame around some of the things that his father did. And I wasn't aware how much it bothered Firo to this day, the dishonorable tactics that his dad employed over a couple of different, instances. So the fact that she, like, when she challenges him, I'm thinking, oh, come on, he's going to see through this. Then a part of me thought, wait, what if he doesn't see through it because he is so sort of hot-headed that she manages to get under his skin and he just can't take the wound to his pride anymore. But then I was realizing we've talked so much about how Firo doesn't really have vanity. And I was like, would that work? I feel like he's gotten past that, actually. And it turns out that basically it works because he agrees with her, like genuinely understands what she means, and really sees his father's wins the same way. Like, those things were dishonorable, and yes, he came out a winner, but does that mean he deserved to win, or did he just trick his way into winning? So there was a part of me that was frustrated that he agreed, but because of the mindset he had when he agreed, that comforted me a lot and made me kind of go, oh, okay, he's not approaching this at all the way I was expecting. And maybe that means he's being smarter about this than I'm wanting to give him credit for. And he goes ahead and fights her, and she is genuinely impressed. You can see that the two of them, they're going like all out, and they are, there's this moment, I love this so much. Firon lay Naroena across his saddle. Ghostan rested Gaslira Sata on her thigh. The two sweat-drenched pilots, as exhausted as their drooping mounts, parleyed again. "Shall we continue on the morrow?" called out Ghostan. There was a respect in her voice. Firo secured his sword to the saddle, let go of the reins, and raised both arms to cross them at the wrist, saluting in the Liuku manner. "It would be an honor to fight you again." Ghostan, stunned momentarily, fumbled to tie her war axe to her back and let go of the reins to return the salute. I just love this. So then we go to the POV of a bird, and any time that Ken Liu is like, I'm about to go into the POV of an animal, I'm like, oh shit, some weird thing is going to happen. And indeed, it does. This bird is carrying a turtle, and it gets freaked out by the Garinnifin flying around, drops it, and it hits Ghostan's mount, which causes it to buck and toss her, and she's falling. And Firo dives and saves her from falling and dying. And she's like, why? That was a sign from the gods. You are clearly the winner. And he says, a great warrior deserves not to have her life end by chance. The world may not be fair, but we must strive to make it so. And she says, you win, my heart accepts. And then we have this awful moment where the native slaves who know their families are going to be killed if they don't win this battle are trying to figure out what the fuck they should do because they've clearly lost. And they decide to fight to the end against their own people on behalf of their families. And Firo is looking on, and he's like, thinking at first that Ghostan lied and that she's saying that they are going to surrender, but they're not really. And he's like, is this an ambush? And she says, no, those are the natives, and we didn't plan it, and we don't have control over this. And he's like, but there are people. And she explains about how their families are being kept as hostages. And he starts crying, and she says, I do not think you understand what life is like in Ukyutoasa. And I really appreciated her saying that the way she did, because she's basically like, it's real bad, dude. It's real, real bad. So, you know, I understand that you have heard some things, but the control that we have over these people and what they're willing to sacrifice. I'm sorry if you can hear this in the background, guys. My dog is starting to get up. But the way that they have been completely defeated is really awful to watch. So, yeah, she knew arriving in Rui was only the first step to an even more taxing journey. She had promised to act as Firo's emissary to Ukyutoasa to negotiate for a full surrender. Enough evil has been committed in the name of our people. Enough blood has been shed for the sake of the Liuku spirit. How will we convince Thane Kutanrovo and her warriors? How can we trust the Dara Emperor won't slaughter all the Liuku, even if the Piku agrees to surrender? And she says, I fought him to know him. He can be trusted because he has the soul of a Liuku. And I'm like, that's all well and good, but you just smooth sailed right on past that fucking question about Kutanrovo. And don't think I didn't notice, because I think you're going to have to kill her yourself if you want anything. And even then, I'm not sure you're going to be able to get a full surrender. I don't see that happening. Maybe I'm wrong, but you know? So we will see. But yeah, this was a really brutal, and I'm like, I'm so happy with Firo and I'm proud of him and everything, but because I like him so much now, I'm like even more worried, you know how that is? And I'm kind of worried that Ghostan is going to die because she's like the sole voice of reason left. And sometimes that's what happens. The only person that might protect her is Tambanaki, and Tambanaki is in a fucking corner at the moment, and I don't know if she has the ability. So she might be put on the spot a little bit. I guess we'll have to see. All right, I'm going to wrap up, but thank you again so much to Kyle for commissioning this. Thank you to everybody who's been listening. Appreciate you all. And until next time, toodaloo, motherfuckers.
That was an Unspoiled Network podcast.